Our next lesson on the sociology of families is about family diversity, the different types of families in our culture. We covered this in the first lesson. We've got to do a little bit more detail, and in particular, learn some names and some social scientists. So I'll recall the argument about this topic, and here's the key words. Here's the two sociologists, Rappaport and Robert Chester. So, the Rappaport, husband and wife, they did some research in the 80s, and they're really the first people to talk about how in modern Britain, the types of families we had massively changed. There was a lot more diversity. Previous to this work, everybody just assumed that most families were traditional nuclear families, low rates of divorce, that sort of thing. And they found no, as divorce has gone up, they also found there's loads more cohabitation. They're the ones got lots more people were remarrying, and in particular, that the number of lone parent families was rising and the culture around it was changing. So that's the Rappaport and their research. A functionalist called Robert Chester has also done quite a lot of work on families. Functionalists are well into families. And his view is that the nuclear family is ideal. It's the correct sort of family. It's the right way to raise children, socialise children. It's the main type. Yeah. Cohabitation should really lead to marriage. Yeah. But what his main thing is, he said, what happens is we still have nuclear families. They just adapted, and he called it the neo-conventional nuclear family. He made up that term. Man, woman, they're both married, so they're both working and looking after their child. That's the neo-conventional family, and that comes from functionalists like Robert Chester. But his main point is that families, they may have changed, but they're still mostly nuclear, because nuclear is the best type of family. Now, postmodernists, they view this massive change in families as a good thing. They would argue that the old-fashioned traditional nuclear family didn't suit many people. They were stuck in things they didn't want to be in. They're part of a marriage they didn't want to be in. And now what we're seeing here with all this stuff is completely positive. It gives you more choice, more freedom, and therefore more happiness. So the postmodernists, these changes we're talking about, remarriage, cohabitation, lone parent families, reconstituted families, that's all good. Right. Also, people have done work on how ethnicity affects families. So Rappaport again did a separate piece of research on how in Britain, how different ethnic minorities have different types of families. So they're ones did the work on lots of South Asian groups tend to live in extended families. Yeah. And how Afro-Caribbean community is a very high number of lone parent families. So when they did their research, about 20% of families were lone parents. Amongst the Afro-Caribbean community, it's about 60%. Today it's 30 and 70. And they wanted to work on the Afro-Caribbean matrifocal family, the mom's head of the family. So how come Afro-Caribbean, the number of Afro-Caribbean families that are lone parent families, how come it's so high? Well, there's a variety of reasons for this given. One, that's the pattern from their original countries in West Africa, where the women were in charge of the family. It just carried on. Others say no. It's to do with slavery. During slave times, men were separated from their families, and women became used to being head of the family, and that culture's persevered. Others say no, it's poverty. Many Afro-Caribbean men lack enough work, enough money to look after their families, so desert their families. And for its culture, if you mix these two together, slavery and poverty together, over time, it gets it with a culture whereby women look after kids, men don't hang around, and everyone's used to it in that community.